Today, I'm going to show you how to build a brand new tool to help sales managers analyze what markets they want to be selling into. Since I am a business leader as well as technical, we are going to go through the business case first. So if you want to use the chapters and jump ahead to the AI product development, feel free. Otherwise, I recommend that you stick around and you check out the business case so that we know exactly why we're building this and who we are building this for. Let's get started. What we're going to talk about today for our new application called the MarketScope Analyzer is we are first going to go into the business case. So why are we building this and who are we building it for? Then we'll talk about what business artifacts are needed to actually test the application. We'll have a discussion about the product development stack that we're using here. Then we are going to actually use AI to develop the application. After we have developed it, we're going to have a MarketScope Analyzer demo, and then we are going to deploy it so that it can be usable out on the internet for anyone to be able to use. All right. I'm a firm believer in talking about the business case with both technical and business teams and making sure we flesh this out before we start product development. And why this is because I have spent too many weeks, months, years of my life developing and not knowing what the real need was, or maybe not understanding the need, or not understanding why we were doing this. And there's a lot of AI demos out there today, and they are not necessarily serving the needs of my customers. And that's why I decided to record this so that anyone can go ahead and use something like this to actually help them or help their teams in their sales, their targeted sales efforts. We're going to talk about now who is our customer? Why does the customer need this? And why are we doing this? So let's talk a little bit about this as it might relate to your life. Everything that you use in your life probably started out as some sort of a commodity. If we think about commodities, corn goes into our corn oil, goes into making breads, fruits and veggies like strawberries, minerals, plastics for all of the toys and household items that we use, and rock, gravel, sand that we use in all of our building materials, landscaping, anything you could think of. All of these commodities have to move by some sort of a method. And generally, these large-scale commodities move by truck, rail, or vessel. So today we're going to talk about a specific group of commodities called aggregates, and that includes rock, sand, and gravel. And we are going to optimize how aggregates are potentially moving or being targeted by sales managers in order to figure out the best place for our sales manager to be able to sell her aggregates. Who is our customer? Our customer is an aggregate supplier, and an aggregate supplier starts out in a quarry or maybe a riverbed, and they are extracting rock, gravel, sand, other materials like that from the ground. The product then needs to be moved generally by truck or rail car if it's within the United States, and that needs to be moved to a destination which is potentially a distribution center or a construction site. So if we think about this, for every 50 miles, if it's $5 a mile to move that rock from point A, my quarry, to point B, my destination, that's $250 in freight. Every sales manager wants to optimize how much they're spending on freight and how far away they need to move that product. We are going to help them with that today with the MarketScope Analyzer. Who is our persona for the MarketScope Analyzer? Our persona is going to be Maria, and she is an aggregate sales manager. Maria has just attended a huge conference, the Aggregates Expo, and she has shaken hands with dozens of people. She's come back with hundreds of business cards, potentially. She had a great time. She had lots of great meals, maybe had a few Diet Cokes, maybe had a few beers, maybe they had a team building event, and she is just flying high on the excitement of the expo. However, no matter how many hands she shook or people she met, she did not meet every single company at the Aggregates Expo. What she did get after the conference was or maybe before, but she got an Aggregates conference attendee list. So she now has a list of all of those potential customers for her aggregates in an Excel file. And she needs to figure out what to do with this Excel file because her vice president is asking her to do some quick market analysis on the target customers that she should be reaching out to. So what does her VP or Chief Revenue Officer want from her? He wants her to divide her potential customers into 3 market areas. So we have market area A, which is going to be 50 miles from her origins. Market area B is going to be 50 to 200 miles out. And market area C is going to be 200 plus miles out. So market area C, as you could tell, would generally be a cost disadvantage for shipping. And it's unlikely that she's actually going to win a lot of business in that market. So that should definitely be her last scenario that she's actually reaching out to those folks. In conclusion, she needs to figure out who is in market A and call these guys first. Why is this difficult? Well, if we think about it for a moment, we have a map here of the Midwest. And let's say that we have a quarry in Des Moines, Iowa. Now, a quarry in Des Moines, Iowa, let's say we're moving that aggregate product to Cedar Rapids. Very easy to figure out what's the mileage, what's the freight going to Cedar Rapids. However, it becomes less easy when we have destinations potentially that Maria has met all over the Midwest or the United States. Now she has to do a lot of math and a lot of number crunching to figure out where that product needs to go. So what the MarketScope Analyzer will do is it will actually bucket her potential customers into a market area A, which is less than 50 miles from her quarry, market area B, which is 50 to 200 miles, and market area C, which is 200 plus miles. It would actually encompass a lot more than this yellow circle, but you get this for illustrative purposes. What is adding another level of complexity here is that potentially Maria doesn't just have a quarry in Des Moines, she also has quarries all throughout the United States. So now she has to think about her additional quarries. She also has a quarry that she's thinking about in Omaha. So now we have to also look at the same subset of potential customers and analyze those for Omaha. So we will also be helping her to figure out who is in market A for Omaha, market B for Omaha, and also market C, which you notice these quickly start to overlap with the Des Moines market. And she will have to make prioritization decisions on who and what to target, especially once she has exhausted that market area A, because you can already see that market area B is overlapping. This is quite complex to do if you have to go to Google Maps and look up each distance and record it for each origin and destination pair. Okay, what does Maria need to get started to actually use the MarketScope Analyzer? Maria only needs 2 things to use the MarketScope Analyzer. She needs a list of origins from her ERP system, and she also needs a list of destinations or customers she is going to target from her conference, which she already has. It's essentially just 2 Excel files that Maria needs to be able to use this MarketScope Analyzer. Now that we've heard Maria's business case, let's jump right into the MarketScope Analyzer product development stack. And here is where we're going to start talking about what does the technical team actually need to build this for Maria and for her team. The first thing that the technical team needs to have is a product definition, a PRD, which is a product requirements document. We will be using Google Maps API for this example. There are other APIs available that will calculate distance, driving distance, such as Rand McNally, I believe, has APIs available if you subscribe to their products. Our dev tools and tech stack are going to include the Cursor AI IDE, Node, React, Tailwind, and we will need a GitHub repository in order to deploy this. And for deployment, we are going to use the free plan on Vercel. First thing is the product requirements document. I am a business leader. I believe strongly that we need to have a great business case defined. And I generate product requirements documents today with an AI tool. You can use ChatGPT, you can use Perplexity, Claude, Gemini. My favorite thus far is still ChatGPT, but that also might be because it has the memory of what I have used and the templates that I have utilized. So you could try all that you would like to try. But what I do is I give it a great description of what I want for the application. And I will give it more details than this, but I give it a description of my application in as much detail as I can. But I don't really format it. I generally just tell it what I'm looking for, and it will generate me the product requirements document, the tech stack, the business purpose, everything, user profiles, all of that can be generated by ChatGPT, Perplexity, or any other AI tool. I am not preferential on which one you use. The next prerequisite is a Google Maps API, and you can also use other robust distance calculating APIs. If you were to try to do this without an API, I believe that it would probably fail because you can try most AI tools and they will not do an iterative approach to calculating distance because you do need to pay for that service from Google Maps, Rand McNally, or others. We are going to be using the Cursor AI IDE, which is based off of VS Code, and we will be doing all of our coding through the chat feature within the Cursor AI IDE, so get that downloaded. And our tech stack. Again, we need to have a GitHub account. We will be using Node, React, and Tailwind, and we will set up a free Vercel account to deploy this so that it is usable on the internet. All right, let's get started actually building our MarketScope Analyzer. Are you ready? Option 1 is a very dead simple way to develop a prototype, which is in the browser. This is great for rapid prototyping so that you can go ahead and see what your application might look like, but it really lacks in fine-grained control. So although I'm going to show you a demo here, I'm actually not going to use option 1 for our development today. For our robust development, we are going to actually do this in IDE. Now let's try real quick here and do option 1. So I've created a project, there's nothing in it, and I'm just going to simply tell me to create an application based on the following PRD. And I am going to copy and paste. I can also upload, but it is not as obvious of what I'm copying and pasting into here. If I upload, I am copying and pasting my entire PRD into here. Now, what will happen at this point is it will actually start thinking, and then it is going to actually start writing the code for me. After I enter my API key, you can see that V0 is now generating all of the files needed that are necessary to run this application. And although it says thought for 5 seconds, this actually will probably take several minutes. We are going to pause and come back when all of the files have been generated and we actually have a preview of the application. Once V0 is done generating all of the code in the browser, you can see it has generated about a dozen files here for us. We can go ahead and hit the preview button. This is actually the most impactful part of doing this in the browser. because you can actually see the results very real time of what you've written or what you anticipated this application to do. And you can use part of it in the browser, but I am not going to use this to its full extent because we actually want the more fine-grained control of developing this in the IDE. But you get the idea here that this is our application called the MarketScope Analyzer. We are uploading both an origin file and a destination file, and this actually does work. We can actually pull our origins from our ERP file, and we can pull our destinations from our conference file. And then we can put in a rate per mile here. And we could just say $5, and it would start processing the files. In my requirements document, I require that there is both a chart and a table, but we'll see that in more detail when we actually develop this in the IDE so that we actually have more control over the code. Option 2 for developing our MarketScope Analyzer application is to develop directly in the Cursor IDE. This is going to give us much more control over our code, advanced debugging features, and lots more options than are available in the browser. However, this is more advanced for those of us that have some technical and coding background. But I would recommend that you move forward because at some point you will need to move your code over into an IDE anyway. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's jump right into the Cursor IDE. As you can see, I have opened a completely empty folder here. I have nothing going on in my chat, nothing in the terminal yet. And I am going to start as if I have no idea what I'm going to be doing yet. I am going to ask Cursor AI to build me an application with the following product requirements. And I am going to take my PRD and I am going to paste it directly into the chat. Now, Cursor should start to develop this application for me, and you can start to see all of the files that are going to be getting populated over here on the file tree. I can start to accept the new files, but I'm going to wait for Cursor to actually finish doing its work. It will create a lot of files for me, and we will come back to this once it has completed its first pass. Cursor has now created the shell of an application with all my requirements, hopefully, and it is asking me now to run npm install to install the dependencies in this project as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just run the command as it has written it for me. Okay, great. It has run npm install. And now it is asking me to accept all of the changes that it has made in my files. You could see here that it has essentially edited 17 files and 886 lines of code. I'm going to accept all of this and assume that the AI knows what it's doing. If I were to do this, since Node and React are not my first programming languages, this would definitely take me days or weeks to complete. I'm going to go ahead and hit the accept all. Okay, great. Now Cursor does tell me what to do next to complete the setup. So what I am going to do is act like I am a novice, and the next step is to create the env local file, which is our local environment variables, but I'm going to ask it how to do this as if I have never done this before. And it does not likely have access to create this for me. Yes, it says it cannot edit files. It is blocked. So it is going to tell me exactly how to create this. So create a new file called env local in your root directory. So excuse me. We'll go in the root of the source. No, it's in the root of the market. I will do new file. env local. And we are going to give it this API key here. This is the label for the key, and I'm going to copy and paste my actual key in here now. Now that I have my env local file and my key populated, Cursor did tell me what my next step was, and that is to start the development server. But this is a few lines back in the chat, so let me just ask again, what's next? And it should, again, give me that command to start that development server. Okay, wow. So it gave me some file changes in the to handle the processing of the uploaded files. I'm going to go ahead and accept those. I was not expecting it to give me changes, but you just don't know what AI is going to do. So let's go ahead and accept those changes. And then I believe it is going to allow me to start that dev server. All right. It is not actually giving me the command for npm run dev. So I'm going to pull up my own terminal here and type that in myself. This is great. The server started up on the first try, and you will notice that we are running our web application on localhost 3000. It has very similar characteristics to what we developed in the browser. It has an upload file section where we upload our origin destination, and we have a rate per mile. It has a market distribution chart and our market analysis results. Let's talk about the two files that we're going to upload first. So the first one is the origin file, and that is going to look somewhat like this. These are Maria's origins. These are her quarry locations. Very simple. We are going to calculate the distance between all of these and all of the destinations that she received from her aggregates conference. She received a list of companies and their city, state, zip, and the folks that she needs to contact. So now we are going to take those. We are going to attempt to upload them here, and we are going to see what the results show. It's a real life demo, so we'll see if it works on the first try. We've got Maria's origins, and I have a small subset of the destinations because I do not want to run hundreds of records through this if it's not going to work. So let's say rate per mile, again, is $5 per mile, and we're going to hit that process files button. Well, part of our application is at least working. So it is telling us that it's parsing 0 of 0 records. We don't really have an error here. We do not have any errors in the terminal. Oh, it's moving. It's moving. So we are processing. Whoa, look at that. It did the work for us on the first try. I'm always so impressed. So what is going on here? Wow, this is so cool. So we have Maria's origins, Maria's destinations, and it has distributed these into what market area they're actually in, which there is one in market area A, one in market area B, and 28 in market area C. Now, this is going to be for all of her markets. So if we go back to where we talked about the various origins, she has origins in Des Moines, Omaha, Kansas City, etc. So this is going to be for all of the markets. And we actually have a grid down here. I would like to clean this up a little bit, but this is showing all of the information that we need to know about for these origin destination pairs. So we can see that if she is targeting certain locations, she can now tell the driving distance between them at $5 per mile. What is the freight cost? This actually should be rate, not rate per mile, but we'll go back and clean that up. And she can pick up the phone and call them, or she can email them. You'll notice primary contact didn't come through. There's definitely some other mistakes in here, but this is awesome. So one thing that was in the product requirements document was that if I click on the chart, it should filter the grid. And it looks like it is doing that certainly for market area C because there's only 28 results. And then I have a button to reset and show all markets. So let's see if that resets the grid. Yes, now I have all 30 results, and I should be able to see that my B market is in there and my A market is in here. So let me see if I can even get close enough here to click on market A. There we go. A little bit hokey, but I clicked on market A, and then now I have all of my market A. I can now take this information, export it to a CSV. I can run some other analysis on it. I can run pivot tables, whatever I am looking for to determine who I need to actually be reaching out to. So let's take a look. And this is actually filtered just by market A, but I do have all of the information in here. So there are a few cleanup items that I would like to do, including exporting the entire list. There's a few other cleanup. Let me do some cosmetic cleanup, and then I'm going to come back and we are going to run a full demonstration of this product. And we are going to have Maria rocking and rolling so that she can quickly start reaching out to those market A and then potentially market B customers within minutes. All right, I ran a few of the cleanup items within Cursor AI, and what I did was I wanted the file inputs to take up less real estate, make the chart more prominent, to change and fix the headers that we had broken in the data table, and give the application a title. And it did all of this in the chat on the side here, so it's changing all of the components that I asked it to change without me ever having to actually go into the files. And this is the result after I have made those changes. We now have an upload files, which is much less prominent, a market distribution chart, which is more prominent. Obviously, that's more important than the upload files. And we have some changes down here to our grid so that it's actually outputting correct data and it's a little bit more readable. So let's go ahead and retest with a much larger set of files from Maria. So what we are going to do first is we are going to grab her ERP origins, and then we are going to grab a larger set of information from her conference. And I believe that there are about 50 or so destinations in this file. Now, this is not an optimized application. It's going to run through them one by one, but it will tell us what it's processing. We're going to plug in this rate per mile here, and then we're going to start processing these files. So if you remember the origins, there was about 10 of those destinations. There was about 50 of those. So this should result in about 500 records or so that we are able to process for Maria. Let's get started. Okay, 561 records that it is going to run through and parse, and we will come back as soon as this is done processing. Now we have processed all 561 records, and we are going to be giving the output in the rate per mile of $5. So if we go ahead and take a look down here, wow, we have 500 results here. I do know that there probably was an error why it said 561 because it was probably taking the headers into account. So we'll go back and we'll fix that. But essentially, we have 500 records. All of these are pageable so that we have a little bit of breathing room to be able to read what we have output here. We can export everything to a CSV so that Maria can then go ahead and run pivot tables or potentially re-upload this to her CRM. She can put this into Salesforce, and she will actually have the market area in here, the distance and the phone, the primary contact, all that information can go into Salesforce. And we have our distribution here of all of the origin destination pairs. So if we look at market A, there are 45 potential targets in market A. And this is awesome because this is the first set of potential customers that she needs to reach out to. And what might have taken her at least hours, if not days, to figure out the driving distance, the rates, all of this information now is done for her in an application in a matter of minutes. So she can start going through and talking to Jane Miller at Aggregates Masters. She could call up Taylor at Rock Solid Supplies. However, this is still running on our local host. So let's go ahead and get this application deployed out to Vercel so that someone out in the world can actually utilize this application. Now that we have our application tested locally, we are going to move our code to GitHub. If you are not familiar with moving your code out into a repository, there's lots of YouTube videos on this, but I will give you a quick and dirty overview so that we could get our code out into GitHub and actually use Vercel then to read from that code. So you'll have to have a GitHub account, and you will need to create a new repository. There's a button on the home page, and I am just going to call it test for these purposes. Call it test, and we'll call it MarketScope Analyzer. And I would like this to be private. I'm not going to publish this out to the world. We do not need a README because it already probably contains a README, and then I'm going to hit create repository. So now that I have this repo out here that's ready to go, you can actually use the command information that GitHub gives you to actually push your repository up. Now, we have an existing repository essentially because we already have the code on our machine, and we're going to use a combination of these commands. Now, I can go back out to Cursor and I can ask it directly, how do I deploy my code to GitHub? And it is actually going to walk me through this, although it may have me select the repository that I need to push to. And I can just hit run and continue. Once you are able to commit your code, you will have everything out here in a repository in GitHub. I'm going to switch over to the actual repo where I deployed this. And voila, you will see all of the code that we just created today is now checked into GitHub. So we will be using this code to deploy to an internet environment on Vercel next. We were able to run and test it locally. We have all of our code checked into GitHub, and now we are going to deploy it to a location on the internet where others can use it. We are going to use Vercel, which is a free hosting environment for this, and Vercel actually will hook right to your GitHub repository so that it is very easy to update your code. Let's get started. First thing you'll have to do is go to vercel.com and create a free account. And then we are on the overview page here, we're going to hit add new, and we're going to add a new project. Automatically, once we have Vercel hooked up with our own GitHub, which this already is, you will have to go through that process on your own if you are not hooked up to GitHub, but it should ask you right away. And it is going to find my new project, which I had just checked in a little bit ago here. So I'm going to go ahead and select this repo, and I'm going to hit import. It already has all of the information, most of the information, excuse me, pre-populated for how I want this project to be deployed. The one thing that we do have to change or set is our environment variables here. And we need to have this set up with the exact same information that we had in the cursor. Excuse me, I didn't need to take that off the page, but in this env local file. So I am going to do that with my own API key. I'm going to set up that environment variable here. And what that is going to look like is, if you recall, it is the next public Google Maps API key. Cursor decided on this naming convention, and I just left it. Once you have your environment variable added to the project here, we're going to go ahead and hit the deploy button. Now you'll see you can actually witness the deployment logs here. More likely than not, there might be some errors on this first deployment. And what we're going to do is we will then take those errors back to Cursor and ask it how to resolve those errors, because we will need to check in our code again to GitHub. Okay, wow, it looks like it deployed on the first go with no errors, which is honestly very happy but surprising to me. So you could see a preview of the application here, and we're going to continue to the dashboard to try to view this I think the dashboard let's see where that dashboard takes us actually. I think it's going to take us to the dashboard for this application. Very cool. Okay, so it comes up with the thumbnail. It has a status of ready, and then it actually gives us a custom URL to get to this application. And you could actually give this to your colleagues, anyone who would like to be able to run this application. We're going to hit the visit button in the upper right-hand corner. And there's no authentication on this application, and we're going to test it and make sure it works in a real life environment actually out on the internet. We will find our origin file out here. And we're going to find a destination file. I'm going to use a smaller one so that I don't actually have to wait very long. And then we're going to put in our rate per mile. This time, let's put $3.50 in, and let's see if we can process some records. All right, so it is doing the work to find the distances between our origins and destinations, populate them to the grid below, populate the chart. We've got one in market area B, one in market area A, one in market area B, one in market area C. And here is our entire list. And that is our MarketScope Analyzer application. Thanks for following along with this AI demo today. I'd love to hear from you if you would like to reach out and talk about real-world applications and building these real-world applications with AI. I am a firm believer that we should be solving valuable problems for the business. And the best way to do that is to really understand what the business needs and to execute against that so that we can add value and help everyone to achieve more profitability. Have a great day.